Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
It's weird, but different podcatchers, their speeds seem to work differently.
It's true, yeah.
Like I was always a double speed or 2.5 on other ones, and now that I'm on Overcast, I find that let me see if I can find, like, I think we're at like 1 3/4 or something.
1 3/4.
Yeah,
that's like slow motion.
I tell you, I know.
No, I'm at 1.25. I'm at 2 point whatever.
Well, it's
it
not
is
1 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Well, they have so it's 0.2, 4, 6, 8. No, it's not even 0.2. There's 5 stops between 1 and 2, and it's the last one right before 2.
See, I'm the one right over 2.
Wow.
It's not that surprising. It's not that much different than yours. I'm telling you, you're being a little bit #judgmental place.
No, I'm not. I'm not being judgmental. I think it's great for you. I am saying I could never do what you can do because I don't have those superpowers.
What you're really saying is, now I see why you missed the belch in that episode, because your work is slipshod because you're moving too fast. That's what I heard.
No.
And what I'm telling you is I missed the belch for many other reasons. I never heard it that fast. I never heard it at all. In fact, I think it's fair to say I didn't listen to the Amazon section of that episode. I was just confident that, Amazon starts here, cut, done.
It was great. I remember nothing but fun in that section. I would keep it. Is that how it works?
That's how it works. We're doing a lot of shows, man.
I know.
Cut me a little.
This is just one of how many that you're doing a week. So I can't even imagine.
Look at you. You just did. You put it back on me just then. You put it back on me.
I'm saying how strong and courageous you are to be doing so much.
I cannot take you seriously right now at all. You are insulting me left and right, and I can't even define how.
There are no insults.
No, it's too late. It's out there.
It's so deep an insult that it's like 100% compliment. That's how far I went.
We've come around. We've come around the compliment.
That's right. Around the horn.
What are you doing? Have you seen anything since we talked last?
Well, we rewatched Star Wars and had a great time doing it.
Yeah, did it hold up? We did that too this weekend. We actually rewatched that too. What'd you think?
It really held up. It's just, it's just so stinking fun to watch. Any problems I have with it or had with it when we discussed it on the film board are so easily glossed over as I just sit and watch it because it's Star Wars and I just can, turn everything off and just sit with a smile on my face and just watch it and revel in the sheer joy of it.
No, we had a delightful time, and it was really fun starting to watch. We haven't by any stretch completed the extra features, but starting to watch some of those extra features were really fun, particularly the BB-8 stuff. It was so easy to kind of just sort of say, BB-8 was a practical effect, like that. They made that droid, and they actually. They did, but sort of. There was a lot of work and CG and different incredibly talented puppeteers to make BB-8 look and work as such a character. And so I thought that was really cool.
We only watched just a part of the overall, like the 1 hour making of. I just watched part of that, and I only got through kind of some of the initial development, so I haven't gotten very far. There's a lot of stuff to look at there. Yeah.
A lot of stuff. Maybe you haven't watched the script read through.
No, I haven't watched that.
Bring your tissues.
Oh, really? They don't do the whole thing, do they?
No, they don't. But that iconic photo, the black and white photo they released. Oh, yeah. Right. So,
they showed some of that in the prep part of the documentary.
That's true. They do. And this is just like a 5-minute bit. I think it may be completely encapsulated in the prep, but they were showing the Mark Hamill did the read through. Everybody else did their characters, but obviously Mark Hamill didn't have much to do, so he read everything else, all the direction and everything else in the screenplay, and he really does have a fantastic voice, and it was really cool to see them do that stuff and to watch all the characters or all these actors interact with one another. I admit it. I was moved. I'm a sucker. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's good stuff. That's going to be a plethora of material to kind of just watch and enjoy.
Shall we tell the people where we're from?
Where are we from?
This is The Next Reel on rashpixel.fm, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're kicking off our Shane Black series with his very first blockbuster screenplay, Lethal Weapon. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show on YouTube or anywhere the finest podcasts are served. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you've ever felt like you're too old for this shit, then you're the perfect candidate for the next reel's Instagram #PonyPrize #GuessTheMovieChallenge.
And with that, let's head on over to Scotland, where Stephen Smart is smack dab in the middle of his own Three Stooges marathon to see if he can take a break and tell us who won this week.
Hey guys. This week we slipped back into the shadows with late 40s noir Cry of the City from 1948, directed by Robert Siodmak and starring Victor Mature and Richard Conte. Just as I was about to post image 3, at Alexander Curran snuck in for his first win of the year. So congrats Alexander, you're entered into the 2016 Pony Prize hat. As always, a new challenge starts on Monday, so thanks guys, and see you later.
Yeah, I have to admit, I expected this blot spot. Ben Lott, friend of the show, has written in with his opinion not only on Hound of the Baskervilles, the final film in our 1939 series, but his reflections on 1939. How'd we do?
Yeah, this was one that I think he kind of pretty much agreed with us. I have next to nothing to add to your comments on the Hound of the Baskervilles. You guys totally nailed my own opinion of the film. I will mention that it was very interesting that this was the first in a series of Sherlock films, but they felt no need to introduce Holmes and Watson. Nowadays, you have to start with an origin, even if it's Batman versus Superman, and you're just introducing a new actor in a role that has already been established on screen for decades. I think that's a great point by Ben that we didn't bring up at all. Quick reflection on 1939. First of all, only one movie of the 10 we've watched has hit my top 100. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is at number 10 for me. In fact, most of the 1939 films are in the bottom 25% of my flick chart. I'm a bit surprised that after 10 films, there are still 4 of the Best Picture nominees from that year that we haven't watched. However, based on how things are going for me, I think I'd be content with stopping here. Your rank for Hound of the Baskervilles, 220. My rank, 181.
I was actually thinking about this very comment as I was watching the new Suicide Squad trailer. Have you seen it? The Blitz trailer?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's a good trailer. I was excited about it, but I had this funny thought that, Batman shows up in it for just a few minutes, I think, in the film. And how funny would it be if 30% of the movie was an origin story for Batman again? Even though it's the same actor. I think that would be in stitches. That'd be funny.
Yeah, you gotta wonder. I mean, I did question. It's like when I saw that in Batman versus Superman. It's like, really?
Again?
It's
But and to the point, it's like we've regressed because probably part of the reason that we didn't introduce Holmes and Watson is because, in fact, Holmes and Watson were already film characters in 1939, just not with these actors. But I
guess that's kind of the point.
Yeah, right. And we don't do that anymore because I think every actor probably wants to have their take on the character.
Well, and as I've said last week, as a non-scholar of Sherlock Holmes, were there any books, was the very first book that he wrote, was that kind of an origin story of Holmes and Watson, or did it always begin kind of, what is the Latin term, in media res?
Yeah, I don't remember. I was, I believe, studying Scarlet, and I actually don't remember how much of an origin story it was. My sense is that it was not, as a result of the fact that I can't remember. I don't remember an origin story of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sherlock fans out there, please tell us.
Yeah. And as I said last week, Andy, I think it's time. Let's do trailers.
So, Pete, my trailer this week
is fantastic.
I really am excited for. It's Jason Bateman's, I think it's his second film that he's directed now, The Family Fang. I had heard nothing of this. Apparently it opened last year at Toronto. I totally didn't hear anything about it from there, but it just looks so great. This is a film, it's about Jason Bateman and his sister, played by Nicole Kidman.
They actually look really good.
They look great together. They look like a great brother-sister pair. I'm really excited about that pairing. And they grew up in this family with parents who were really into performance art. And their parents really kind of forced them. I mean, as kids, it didn't look like they were forced. But as they got older, it seemed like they probably were forced to be a part of this these crazy antics, like posing for the Christmas photo, and then they all open their mouths at the last minute, and they're all wearing fangs, and blood is pouring from their mouths. looks great. So their parents, Christopher Walken, and who is the mother? Mary Ann Plunkett playing the mother.
Mary Ann Plunkett.
And they want to, now that their kids are grown, they want to have another little bit of performance art, but Nicole and Jason don't want anything to do with it, and so the parents kind of leave in a huff, and all of a sudden turn up missing, and there's a crime scene, and of course the kids are like, no, they're not dead. It's all performance art. And it turns into this quest to kind of find their parents and prove that it's all just performance art. While at the same time, I have a sense of kind of finding themselves and their place in this crazy world. I love the sense of this story. I love the quirkiness of it. I love this kind of performance art angle to it. Everything about it just is right up my alley. It's based on a novel by Kevin Wilson, and the screenplay is by David Lindsay Abaire. And I don't know, man. I think this looks really good. I hope it's good. David Lindsay Abaire's screenwriting, I know he's a Pulitzer Prize winner, I believe, but he wrote the Poltergeist remake and Oz the Great and Powerful. So some things that give me pause. But he also did Rise of the Guardians, which I actually really liked, and Inkheart, which you really liked, right?
I really did, yeah.
And so, maybe there's hope. Maybe there is hope.
Yeah, I saw that, one of the logs, one of the CG sort of quotes on this thing is the best story about an eclectic family since the Royal Tenenbaums. This looks so much better than the Royal Tenenbaums. Which I thought was just interminable. I did. I had a hard time with that. This is I think probably the family story that I need to cleanse my palate of that. This looks quirky and fun. And Jason Bateman, how can you not enjoy Jason Bateman? Did you see his first film? This was Bad Words, his first directed film.
It's been on my list. I keep meaning to, and I just totally missed it. And but I after watching this trailer, I brought it right up to the top of my Netflix queue because I really want to see that one.
Let me tell you my worry, and I wonder if you will share my opinion. I adore Jason Bateman. He is high on the list of best friends who haven't met me yet, right?
Yeah, I hear you. Me too.
And Bad Words was funny. I thought it was funny. I worry that with any other actor in that role, I would have found it not funny. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I worry about this as well. I think it has that what this one has that Bad Words did not have is Nicole Kidman and Christopher Walken. I mean, I think that those are two more actors that I'm deeply interested in their interpretation of this kind of family story. So I am very excited about it. I think it looks really, really great.
It's super quirky, and I can't wait to see it. This one opens, I think it's limited April 29th, and everywhere else, I believe it's early May. So we'll have to check that one out soon.
Excellent.
Now, Pete, tell people what your trailer is this week.
Andy, timing sucks so bad for us. This trailer dropped right after we'd already recorded last week's show. That's right, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, which now is settled on me as being just a terrible title. A Star Wars story? That really sounds terrible. But everything else looks so awesome in this trailer. It looks so awesome.
Oh, yes.
Gareth Edwards directing. We like the Gareth Edwards. Mixed on Godzilla. I think some of us were mixed on Godzilla, but generally we are pleased with Gareth Edwards' work, and so very excited to see what he brings to this story. It is such an awesome kind of throwback, right? They have just the right mix of the old stormtroopers and the old rebel soldiers with the like velodrome bike helmets. Mixed with the new stormtroopers, and they're in black, and then they bring up the AT-ATs in just perfectly
on the beach.
That was just great. And I think one of the things that I found myself really reflecting on is just how well this trailer reflects how great CG is at making these giant mechanical, formerly practical effects look practical again. Like these AT-ATs I thought were terrific, and they looked exactly like they looked, as they were careening toward the hidden rebel base on Hoth, except for there were just more of them and they're doing more stuff, and yet they still look very much like the practical effects that I'm used to. And so even though I know that they're very much sort of CG accentuated devices, so I'm really excited about it. I'm furious at the the sort of backlash against Felicity Jones and her casting as, what is it now? I don't even know what the hashtag is, but it's the another white brunette girl hero. How quickly we forget where we have come from.
That just makes me so irritated.
It's so irritating. She looks terrific. She looks really like just another fantastically strong and hopefully well-written character. I am more curious about her, in fact, than I'm finding that I was about Ray. Like this I find so interesting, and I think there is a lot of promise in a standalone story. They don't really have to make good on anything that comes next, because really they could kill everybody in Rogue One. Everybody could die, and it wouldn't matter because supposedly it's a standalone story, right? I don't think they will, but I think there's just a lot of promise. And they can take more risks in these sort of stories that are not part of the saga. So I'm super curious about it. I can't wait to see it. Alan Tudyk is in it. How can you go wrong?
I can't wait. Everything about it just looks so fun. The look, the vibe, the fact that it doesn't have to be about Jedis. There's no sign of any lightsabers in the trailer. Just
right.
Really great characters. And Mon Mothma, who looks just like Mon Mothma. I don't know if they cast the same actress, but I love the fact that it looks like they did.
And capes. My goodness, this trailer is a celebration of capes.
And a samurai.
How do they stay? They parade through the beaches. Long capes. We should wear capes.
I'm wearing mine right now.
I'm very excited.
Surprised.
The release date of this thing it starts rolling out in France December 14th, 2016, and parades around the world until it reaches the U.S. December 16th. Sorry, Poland, December 23rd. What's up with that? Everybody else is...
They're going to have to go to a neighboring country.
Yeah. So there you go. Looks like it'll be good fun. Mid-December.
Cannot wait.
Rogue One, yes. How's your inner child?
My inner child is super excited.
Really?
Like it won't go in the box anymore.
Really? Oh, Andy, I'm so happy for both of you.
Thank you.
I don't make things complicated. That's just the way they get all by themselves.
He's a criminal's worst nightmare. A cop who enjoys the danger.
No guns, no jiu-jitsu, just bring him down.
Do you really want to jump?
Well, then that's fine with me. Come on.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait a minute. What the...
He was ready to retire. Now, he's gonna wish he had.
Gun! Oh!
Raj, meet your new partner.
New partner?
Too old for this. If these guys can just stand each other.
What you got in there?
4-inch Smith?
A lot of old timers carry those.
The bad guys don't stand a chance.
Don't kill anybody.
Don't kill anybody.
I'm too old for this. Are you as good as you say you are?
Nobody can touch me.
Suppose we better register you as a lethal weapon. You ever met anybody you didn't kill? Well, I haven't killed you yet.
Lethal Weapon, Andy. Why is it taking us almost 5 years to talk about this film? Should that have been rhetorical? Should I have used my rhetorical voice? Seriously, let's think about this. I mean, when you talk about movies that have impacted your youth, this goes back to, I was just listening to I was listening to us 5 years ago, talk about Raiders. And the first question I asked was, what is your first memory of seeing that movie? Now, I recognize that there are very few movies that might be up there for you in the Raiders category. But for me, Lethal Weapon was one of those films. It was like the first grown-up action testosterone movie, like the first serious buddy cop action movie that I saw where there was overt crazy violence and nudity. And so, and I saw it with my dad. And I remember walking out just juiced.
I bet.
You didn't share that?
I actually did not see this in the theaters.
What?
And actually, I did not actually even see this until after Lethal Weapon 2 came out. And Lethal Weapon 2 was my actual entry into this series.
Oh, God.
Isn't that weird? I don't know how I missed this. I just think it was just one of those movies that was not... my dad probably wouldn't have taken me to it. I mean, he liked taking me to action films, but it wasn't.
Ask him? Did you
it wasn't
ask him?
at this age. Well, I don't think I was looking for this sort of movie at that age.
Yep, your odds 50% by asking, Andy.
Thank you for that. Wow, spoken like you've been hanging out with my dad. That was weird.
I think it's also fair to say I've been waiting 5 years to do that. That's it. That's the best thing I ever learned from your dad right there. I use that all the time with my own kids.
It's a good line.
Yeah.
It is a good line, yeah. No, I mean, he would take me to action movies, but I don't think it was violent R-rated action movies at that age.
Mm.
Like, he was more inclined to take me to something like The Hunt for Red October, which came out a few years later. Mm-hmm. That's something that he probably would have taken me to.
Because you would have been, 15 when this came out? I think that's right, 15?
14.
14. Okay. All right. 14. See,
technically 13 because it came out in March.
Well, that's why it was transformative for me, because my dad made a bad parenting decision. I'm seeing that now. And now that I've made a few of those parenting decisions on my own, I'm okay with it.
No, you're all good.
Who would have done this? The premise here, veteran cop Murtaugh partnered with a young suicidal cop Riggs, both having one thing in common: hating working in pairs. They make it sound so kind. Even though they've already thrown out suicidal.
That really turns it into kind of the buddy cop comedy side of the story, I think.
Right. Okay, well, so this is definitely not your Raiders. It is a tragedy of fate that you saw this after 2. But I will still open with the question, Andy, how did it hit you?
I mean, I enjoyed it more in my youth. I think now, upon rewatch, I just found it more dated. I definitely appreciate some of the action tropes and some of the stuff that Shane Black brings to the table here. I feel like this is I'm torn between this and 2 as my favorite of the series. It still might be 2, mainly because that's probably the one that really introduced me to this series. And then 3 and 4, I just really have issues with. I just didn't like either of those very much. And I feel like there was a lot of the Shane Blackness in the script that I like quite a bit upon rereading it. But I feel like Richard Donner brought stuff to the screenplay here that... And a lot of it is in the script, but I feel like he enhanced it. A lot of the stuff, like the family connections and all of that I ended up struggling with more. And also just it's weird because Mad Max or Mel Gibson played Mad Max, and there's I think a more it's odd that he's named Mad Max in those films, but he isn't as mad as he is in this film. And I find his craziness here to be a little too cartoonish.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, obviously maybe it's because he kind of brings Three Stooges and kind of that wackiness into it. And there are times where I have a hard time buying into him, like when he's kind of pulling those sorts of goofy things, and when he's like, like, let's do it, let's jump, let's do it. And things like that, I have a harder time buying into as him being suicidal, and more just him being kind of that wacky, funny, crazy Mel Gibson.
Maybe I hadn't made the connection, the Mad Max connection. And I think you're right. In this film, I actually see him as more of that Mad Mel than Mad Max, certainly. And maybe it's because there's more of the madness, like the psychosis, and not just the rage. But I actually really found I liked the origin story of Riggs. I really was connected to it.
You mean, when you say origin story, you mean the death of his wife?
Yeah. The sequences of him alone in the trailer, I thought were really touching in that kind of over the top, like tough man being sensitive way. I actually really liked it. I liked him exploring the bullet. I liked him exploring the gun. I thought it was particularly tense watching him with that big gun in his hand, pointing it at his head, putting it at his mouth. That was just really, I found sort of viscerally horrifying. And to have, only those lines of him talking to the picture of his wife, and then admitting how insane it is that he's even having these thoughts. I know it's crazy. I thought that was really powerful stuff. You thought it was too over the top?
No. That stuff I like. Those are the elements that I feel give it a sense of him being really kind of suicidal and there's that dangerous suicidal element that I think there are flashes of, like when he catches the guy in the first chase at the Christmas tree place. And,
yes.
he does, that's where he pulls the Three Stooges bit, but then when he grabs the guy and he's like, go ahead and pull it. And he like grabs the gun and all that sort of stuff. I see flashes of that craziness there. And I kind of like it there. And I thought he was great and intense there. But then there are times where like, I don't feel it worked as well when he's on the building and he's trying to talk that guy down. I just feel like it became a little too comical, where it's just like, you want to jump, let's do it. Just like I especially because maybe it's because I have a lot of problems with that setup for that scene anyway. And that's kind of the issue I had, is there were times where that suicidal tendency that he had just kind of veered into the kind of the crazy, wacky territory, and I didn't buy into it as much.
Okay. I didn't have any trouble with the Christmas set. I found the crazy wacky stuff was really fun and funny, and loved the way he used that kind of wackiness to throw the three drug-dealing idiot, Christmas tree salespeople, off their game. I thought that was actually really, really nice. And I totally agree with you that the psychosis of him actually, in that gun exchange, was really powerful. When you get to see that glimpse of the series, I totally agree with you that the jumping sequence is ridiculous, for one major reason. How did neither of them make note of the fact that the giant inflatable balloon was being blown up by the giant crew of fire people about 8 stories below them? I have a really hard time with that.
That has been my problem with that scene ever since I saw this film. Like, I'm always like, how did they not see that? It's a huge airbag right below them, and they completely miss it?
Yes. Not only that, the camera in that sequence has to work really exceptionally hard not to see the giant airbag down below them. Yes. If the camera has to work that hard, obviously hard, such that the audience doesn't catch that they're trying to avoid that giant airbag, then that's just the wrong play. That just doesn't work. And that, I think, detracts from the entire sequence, the whole thing. And I feel like I know what they were trying to get at. I know that they were trying to, further cement this, Riggs, get the audience really questioning whether or not Riggs is truly, psychologically compromised, or if he's just trying to pull for benefits.
Right.
It just didn't work. It just takes you out of the movie, in my opinion.
And that's another element that never worked for me in the screenplay, was the constant, conversations that people were having about his imbalance. And because of the way that it was treated in the script, it always felt kind of silly, like the bickering between the captain and the precinct psychologist, and how dismissive he was of her. And it felt like, I don't see it. It's just, he's fine. And it became this thing where it's like, I don't know. They never painted it like it was that serious. And so I had a hard time buying into that nature of it. I don't know. I felt I'm really torn with my feelings about it, because I feel like it wasn't painted as well as I remembered it. And I wish I could really pinpoint it better. But I just, I just felt like there were elements in the script that just didn't keep it there for me.
I think in recent, maybe not so recent shows, but certainly shows that are coming up that have yet to air, we have talked about, come back around to this concept of how expeditious of a screenwriter these folks are, how much they rely on dialogue to tell a story. And I think this is one of those films where, you learn a lot in the trailer sequences about Riggs without any words at all. Right, you learn a lot about him and his backstory, and through just a snippet of a television reporting, you just really learn everything you need to know about this guy's background. And then we get into some of these sequences where there's just way too much dialogue. It's like it's a complete roller coaster, but you can see hints where black screenwriting is really expeditious, and it sort of fades in and out, right? That sort of early skill, and I'm really curious to see how well he evolves in that area and sort of sharpens his screenplays.
Yeah.
I don't have any real memory of many of the films, certainly from a perspective of building the screenplay that we're doing in this series.
No, I don't either. I need to go back. I had read this screenplay and I think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I've seen bits and pieces of the other scripts. So I'm curious. I'm going to try to read all the screenplays as we go along, see if I can get through them all, if I can find the time, just to really get a handle on how the screenplay worked versus how that film ended up playing out. So it'll be interesting to see if I can pull that off.
So what is your sense with how he writes the screenplay for Lethal Weapon, having gotten through it? I haven't gotten through the whole thing, but what's your sense of how well he actually, writes these things?
He is really kind of a famous screenwriter. The reason that we did this series on him is because he became this legendary screenwriter. In fact, here's a quote from Colin Chang from Logline, said this: "Legendary screenwriter Shane Black was famous for talking directly to the reader and greasing the rails, as it were. He made reading a script fast and fun. Most importantly, he made you feel as if you were part of the story as it unfolded, and we ate it up like candy." And I think that, that's kind of what he did with his screenplay. And you read the script, and it's just, it really is a breeze to read. It makes it really fun to just kind of go along with the story. And, he throws things in, like reading the beginning of the open of the script. "City of Angels lies spread out beneath us in all its splendor, like a bargain basement promised land. Camera soars, dips, winds its way slowly down, bringing us in over the city as we super the main titles. Titles end as we spiral down toward a lush, high-rise apartment complex, the moon reflected in glass. Camera continues to move in through billowing curtains into the inner sanctum of a penthouse apartment, and here, boys and girls, is where we lose our breath." And it's just moments like that, "and here, boys and girls," where it's just kind of like he's got that kind of cutesy way that makes it really kind of fun, because you're like, oh, that was kind of a clever little way to kind of tie me in all of a sudden, and then
he's like a carnival barker, right? He's a showman in his writing. Like it feels like Moulin Rouge. Like there's somebody there who's calling me in to open the curtains and be a part of it.
Yeah, like later when Riggs and Murtaugh go to the Beverly Hills home for tracing some clues, he writes, "Exterior, posh Beverly Hills home, twilight, the kind of house that I'll buy if this movie is a huge hit. Chrome, glass, carved wood, plus an outdoor solarium, a glass structure like a greenhouse, only there's a big swimming pool inside. This is a really great place to have sex."
That's great.
Yeah, so he really has a lot of fun with the scripts, and the whole thing from beginning to end really kind of feels that way. This is somebody who's having fun, and he's inviting you along with him. And yes, there's a lot of violence. Yes, there is some misogynism. Yes, there is some undertones that definitely now can kind of make you feel uncomfortable. But at the time, it was so much fun, and it really brought you along for the ride. And I think that's what made him a success. I mean, he wrote this like right out of UCLA and ended up getting it sold for $250,000, which was huge at the time. You know, I mean, he made a lot of money, and it was he was this 23-year-old kid, and all of a sudden he was kind of setting the standard for action screenplays. So I think that worked well for him as he went on, but I think we'll kind of talk about how it ended up kind of hindering his career a little bit too. I think it's interesting that this was so popular that he was actually hired and paid $125,000 to come back just to come up with the idea for the sequel for Lethal Weapon 2. So, but I mean, he's a fun writer, and that's what I really like about reading his scripts. That's why I would always tell my students to read his scripts, because he makes screenwriting fun, and he does things that, if they can pull off, can work really well and help sell a script. It's not necessarily stuff that ends up in the film, but it's stuff that makes it great for readers to read. But all of that aside, I also think that he knows how to tell an interesting story. Yes, I have problems with this screenplay. There's, I shake my head at a lot of the way that the police work actually is handled. There's
no police work in this movie.
Are these guys just handling all the evidence at the crime scene before anyone gets here to look at it? There's so many questions I had about what they were actually doing.
But that's interesting, right? Because this was not a procedural, and it didn't set itself up to be a procedural, right? We didn't really get into procedurals until CSI, right? I mean, that was a change in how the police drama, it was expected to be culturally. This was about these two guys, and that's all we cared about.
Right. It was very much buddy cop comedy. Sort of thing, and in a way, it really kind of set the standard for expectations in that genre, and I think that he tapped into that. And I mean, there had been others before, but I don't think that any of them really set the standard like this one did. And you can really look at the benchmark this set and see kind of what. Where that action mark ended up going because of what he did here.
Yep, I absolutely agree. Should we bust into the some more specifics about the cast? Are you ready to do that?
Yeah, I think that well, before we talk to cast, let's just talk about Richard Donner real quick.
Director Richard Donner,
who helmed this.
Yeah.
Because he came on, I think he's the reason that we ended up with the cast that we got. I think he's the one who ended up inviting Mel Gibson and Danny Glover to be a part of this. I think, well, first, I think it's really funny that before him, they actually were offering this to Leonard Nimoy to direct. Like, that's an interesting choice. But he said he actually wasn't comfortable doing action. Good for you, Leonard. This probably wasn't for you.
Yeah, that was smart.
And he was also doing 3 Men and a Baby. And so he stuck with what he knew, and he did a great job with that film. But then Richard Donner, he had experience with a lot of these. And, I think that some of my issues with the film come from him. And, I like Richard Donner. He's done a lot of great stuff. The Omen, the original 2 Superman films, The Goonies. That's one of my favorites. I think that, and then of course he's done all 4 of the Lethal Weapon films. The thing that I feel about Richard Donner that he brought to the table is I think he ended up really emphasizing the nature of family in this script. And I think that really became prevalent in the 3 that followed, how family became so key in the stories. And I think family, it was written in the screenplay here by Black, and obviously it becomes very important because Rianne gets kidnapped and there's all of that sort of stuff. But by the time we get to I can't remember if it was the 3rd one or the 4th one that ends with like the big group photo and like, we're family. I was just like ready to throw up watching that in the film. It was just so maudlin and just silly. I feel like he brought that to the film, and really I feel like he brought it because this group of people had been around for 4 films, and they had become a family, and that's why I think that they did that. I just felt like it was not appropriate for the film. I really feel like like some of the violence and some of that suicidal nature, some of the craziness of Riggs got a little watered down by Donner. And so as much as I love what was going on in here conceptually, I feel like it didn't completely work for me. And I feel like I personally feel like I pinned that to Donner. And yes, some to Black for some of the comedy antics in the screenplay. But I don't know. I like Richard Donner, though. I like what he does in general. What did you think of his direction?
Well, I liked him too. I couldn't help but think about where he had come from immediately before Lethal Weapon, right? I mean, it was 1976 when he did The Omen. That was the last R movie he did before this one. And then he did Superman, uncredited on Superman 2, Inside Moves, dumb. The Toy, the Jackie Gleason Richard Pryor film, Lady Hawk, and then The Goonies, right? All of these films are really centered on, in some way, shape, or form, that sort of tribe relationship, family or a relationship, like partner relationship, love relationship.
And more youthful.
Exactly. Much more youthful, much more sort of playful than... And I think that so much of that is injected into Lethal Weapon, and if anything, that's where some of that weird awkwardness comes into play, where it's youthful and playful in ways where it probably shouldn't be, and certainly wouldn't be if the film were made today.
Right. Yeah, I feel like now you could make something that was much more just straight up violent. I mean, I really feel, looking at this again, like a Lethal Weapon with these two cops, one of whom is a touch suicidal, and take kind of some of that comedy out of it. I think it could have made a really intense police action film.
What do you think about the remake of Miami Vice?
Oh, it's tedious. It was just a snooze fest.
You thought it was snooze-worthy, huh?
Oh, yes.
I didn't think it was. I didn't sleep through it. I mean, it was a little bit long-winded, but.
But see, I also
so harsh on it, but that isn't that kind of the same thing. I mean, that going from the frivolity of the TV show to something that was easily seriously much darker than the TV show. And I guess my point is, I don't necessarily know that I would have wanted that. Like, I think you're absolutely right. Lethal Weapon would make a great remake right now, and to take some of that sort of candy coating out of it. But that's a lot of what makes Lethal Weapon, as it is, so much fun.
Well, yeah, and I'm probably wrong in saying that. I mean, I really feel like I'd be taking out a key element that actually makes it what it is.
Right.
So yeah, I don't necessarily think that's the right answer. I'm not sure what the right answer is. I just feel like Richard Donner may have added a little more of that family vibe to it and brought down the level of that kind of the frightening realities of some of that suicidal nature that might have made it a stronger film, at least for me.
Mm-hmm. All right, I hear it.
So
anyway, I really appreciate what Richard Donner did to it. I actually, I quite like it, and I think I think his approach to it. I think that's what makes Mel Gibson shine. Is Mel Gibson is particularly adept at bringing that kind of wild frivolity to the role at this era of his career, and he was magnetic to watch.
Yeah, and he's certainly the best in this one out of the four. Oh gosh, I don't know. He's pretty good in the second one too. Again, I'm torn between the two. I think we should just give quick credit where credit is due to Joel Silver. I mean, we've talked about a number of his films that he's produced, but we haven't really brought him up. But I got to say, the man knows how to produce action films.
That is the truth.
Boy, oh boy! I mean, you look at his credits. I mean, starting back in the 70s with like The Warriors, and Xanadu doesn't really fit, but I mean, like
Xanadu totally fits. You shut your mouth.
48 Hours, Streets of Fire, Commando. Jumpin' Jack Flash had some action right before this, and then he gets into Lethal Weapon and Predator and Action Jackson, Die Hard. I mean, just the list of stuff that this guy has done, and I mean, all the way up through Shane Black's film that's coming out this year, The Nice Guys.
Die Hard is another one of those movies that fits exactly with this, right? Mel Gibson's Riggs, and is Bruce Willis, and to John McTiernan's. Right, John McClane. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is that same character, that same humor. Die Hard would be a very. It has the makings for a seriously dark film if you take some of the frivolity out of it. But that's also what makes it so special.
Yeah.
So
I love Die Hard. Die Hard, I definitely love vastly more.
More than Lethal Weapon, certainly.
Yeah. You know, another problem that I have, and speaking to cast now, I guess, I don't know why, but Danny Glover's character, Roger Murtaugh, has always kind of driven me nuts.
Why is that?
I think it's just this whole kind of like, he's got a really weird relationship with his family, and he talks to himself a lot. And I mean, it's nothing that I think I can blame on anyone except just me and my reaction to him. It's probably fine as character traits. I just, for some reason, watching him, it just kind of drives me a little nutty. And he in particular, as this series went on, I just got more and more sick of Murtaugh.
Everybody's sick of Murtaugh. I did not get sick of Murtaugh, but this was the first time I think I appreciated the film for the perspective that where we pick up in the storyline of these two characters, they are already older guys, right?
Yes.
I mean, they're both Vietnam vets. This is a film that celebrates the end of, in many respects, their second careers. Right? And that's something I didn't get when I was a kid, when I saw this, that maybe my dad understood at the time, but I certainly did not in a way that I do now. And that's something that I think hinders the series, where if you buy into it, it helps this film, right? I found myself, like, I understood it. I understood his fatigue, but at the end of this film, they could just as well have retired and I would have been okay. Like, it doesn't make sense to me how he's on his retirement bent and, they keep bringing him back for the rest of the series.
Well, it's because it made so much money. They had to keep bringing it back.
I know, but from the character perspective, it never made a lot of sense to me. Like, it didn't really, I didn't really buy it, and so that's one of the things that I think hinders it. But I do get it in this case. Like, this is a movie that celebrates, old guys who are kind of, particularly in Murtaugh's case, he's an old guy who is like, here's this sort of energetic, psychopathic, partner that he is stuck with, who, like a puppy to an old dog, kind of allows him to recover and regain his enthusiasm for the job for this one last thing. And I that's a trope, and I like it. I connect with it. But again, this would have been a really satisfying one-off. I could have seen it just end.
No, I agree. And actually, in the original ending, I believe that he actually is talking about retiring, and Riggs is kind of talking him out of it. Right. And I mean, I don't know. I kind of like that as an ending. And this is kind of the downside to the Hollywood machine. When something makes money, they want to keep cranking stuff out.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. This would have been great as a one-off where it kind of ended here.
Yeah.
But that being said, I still love Lethal Weapon 2, so I'm not going to fault it for creating something that makes money. I mean, you can't do that. And
in fact, I mean, Leo Getz in 2 is Joe Pesci's greatest comedic character.
So good.
That doesn't really, I mean, he gets annoying in the other movies, but in number 2, he was perfect.
Yes.
So
his bit about Subway is just will live on in infamy.
It will live on in infamy. Absolutely. What about Gary Busey?
This is the period where I guess I could handle Gary Busey better. I mean, he's great as kind of that malicious, evil psycho killer. I mean, I think that he does a great job with that type of character. I enjoy seeing him here, and I enjoy just the vibe that he brings as kind of this dark, evil person who also, and I really liked this in the script, that really the good guys and the bad guys are all from the same world. They all came from that Vietnam world.
Yes.
And I really liked that a lot in this script, that they all kind of had that background. And I thought he was, I actually thought he was really good here.
I did too. What did you think of the final fight?
It drives me nuts.
Me too, for so many reasons.
I was just like, God, this is just like more testosterone. Throw it at the screen. Let them fight. I don't know. It's like watching Godzilla. It's like, no, let them fight.
Murtaugh practically would have said that. That is the thing that bugs me probably more than the fire balloon in the jumping scene that is when all of the cops are showing up to watch this martial arts face-off in a suburban front yard in the rain of a fire hydrant. That is so beyond anything that I can possibly wrap my head around as real anymore. I probably loved it. I probably just ate it all up, every bit of it. But that dates the film for me more than just about anything else. When the cops are saying, "No, I'm a cop. Don't stop him. Let him fight."
Right.
That's not, let him fight is not a thing they say.
Right.
Ever.
No. And also, and this really bothered me more than I've ever been bothered. And maybe it's just I never really paid attention to it. But the fact that Gary Busey pulls up to the house and, you got that cutesy moment when he's in the house and he comes to the sign that says, "Hey, we're nobody here but us good guys, ho, ho, ho," or whatever it is. It's straight out of Die Hard sort of a little note. But the thing that really bothers me is that he pulls up to the house. The house is under protection by 2 cops out front who are like checking people to make sure that they're not crazy psycho Gary Busey. And he pulls out his gun and blows them away. Yeah. And it's just like, all the cops knew this guy was coming to the house. The family was already safely away. And this is why it drives me nuts now. It's like the family was safely away. The whole thing was a setup to get him into the house to see the note before they drive the car into the house. And so it's like they deliberately let these 2 cops sit out front and get killed by Gary Busey.
Yeah, they were plot points.
In order for them to get him into the house. He could have gotten into the house completely fine without having to have 2 cops' lives lost by this crazy guy, just in order to have Riggs and Murtaugh set him up.
Yes.
Ridiculous. I was so bothered that those cops got killed.
There's a lot of that was another thing that really, there's a lot of just frivolous shooting of people that touched me more than it ever has.
Yeah.
Just a lot of rolling on the ground, shooting people, it was pretty frivolous. Yeah. But I have to say, on the other side of that, there was some fantastic torture. As long as we're talking about that, the salt in the wound, and the electricity, Enza's electricity, that was tough. That was good.
That was brutal.
Yeah.
That was creative and awful.
Yeah. That was pretty good stuff.
You know what else we had that is worth talking about? We kind of glossed over Mel Gibson early on, but 2 key things with Mel Gibson that I think are worth mentioning. One, his hair. Done by Ramsey.
Yes.
Now Ramsey is listed as Mel's hairstyle designer in the credits. And I think it is key to point out that this was really iconic for Mel Gibson at this time. Like, this hair became really what Mel Gibson was like, his look, And it's funny that it was such a critical thing. And it is scripted that, he's I can't remember the word in the script, but it's like, his long hair. So, he had long hair, and it was designed to be this way for Mel Gibson. And I think that it just became really kind of key for Mel Gibson. Like, I can't remember the point when all of a sudden he lost his hair and it was like Mel Gibson with short hair. And it was almost a shock to see him not with long hair again.
It was after, wasn't it after, right after Braveheart?
Maybe.
Because he did, well, there was Lethal Weapon 3 and then was Lethal Weapon 3 it? No, he still had it in Lethal Weapon 3. That's right.
All of those had long hair. Maybe it was like Forever Young or Man Without a Face.
Maverick, he did not.
Oh, well, Hamlet, actually, he did not.
And
he had a short haircut in Hamlet.
He did. And so Hamlet must have been shot after Lethal Weapon 3. Because then Man Without a Face and Ransom and all of those were... Well, except for Braveheart, but Braveheart may have been no. Braveheart was a weave. That was clearly a wig.
Well, Hamlet was 90, and then he had 2 years before he was on screen again. So he had 2 years to grow his hair out again.
What about John Smith and Pocahontas?
He had long hair there too.
I think he had long hair there. It was long, flowing blonde hair.
But so that was one thing about Mel Gibson, and the other thing, like, was this the start of Mel's butt craze? Like, there was this period also around this time, like late 80s, early 90s, where I felt like every Mel Gibson movie had to have his butt in it. And I know he had it, he flashed it in Gallipoli, but I feel like this is kind of where the real butt craze began. I don't know. I don't know why that sticks in my head, but it's like, oh, geez, more of Mel's butt.
Andy, Mel Gibson has an incredible butt.
That's what it is, right?
Right? I mean, come on. It is it is a work of art. And where else are you going to showcase it?
True. Very true. Might as well be here.
Celebrate the butt, Andy. If you
really want to celebrate the butt, go watch Bird on a Wire, because that was the butt celebration film, as I recall.
I think we've we've done all we can do on that.
I think so. How about Mitchell Ryan, Pete?
He was. I'm used to Mitchell Ryan playing either something really melodrama or comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know him all that well from too many shows, but I know him very well from Dharma and Greg.
Right.
That was just happened to be when I was watching, more evening sitcoms, and it was goofy, and he was really, really funny in that show. So to go back and see him in this film as the key villain was really surprising. I'd forgotten he was even in it.
Yeah, I had too. I don't know if I've seen that much of him. I mean, he was in High Plains Drifter. He was in Friends of Eddie Coyle. I mean, he's definitely been in some great films. And then he's like, 107 episodes of Dark Shadows.
Yeah, right. Hot Shots Part 2.
Right. I mean, he is all over the place as far as kind of the types of projects that he's done. My memory of him, though, is that we saw him at Disneyland.
You did.
With his family, yes. And it was just one of those moments. I'm like, hey, that guy's kind of familiar. And I couldn't place him until I saw an episode of Dharma and Greg. I'm like, oh, that's the guy.
Yeah. He was Commander Will Riker's father on Star Trek Next Generation. He was actually up for the role of Jean-Luc Picard.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah, that was his it could have been Mitch Ryan as Jean-Luc Picard.
Boy, that feels weird
French.
now, thinking about that.
It would just be John Picard.
Yeah, John, right.
John. And instead of a C, it'd be Picard with a K.
Right.
But anyhow, no, he was. I think he was terrific, and I like his his little speech about trust when he lights Mr. Joshua's arm on fire is particularly intense, and I think he was great. He's not in it all that much, right? This is really a Mr. Joshua kind of a film.
Yeah, and he's kind of that antagonist who's kind of the big boss, but he's it's his henchman who really is the one who is the violent evil one. Did you like Tom Atkins in it?
What was he supposed to be, a car dealer?
He's a banker. He runs a bank.
Felt like a car dealer.
Yeah, I mean, he's fine. He's just one of those guys who pops up in. We talked about him in Escape from New York.
Yeah.
And he's just one of those guys who's just he's a face that I'm used to seeing. I have three more actors that I just wanted to briefly mention. Mm-hmm. First, Darlene Love as Danny Glover's wife.
Danny Glover's wife, right.
And she's in all the films. And I really don't have much to say to her, except, as the person who sings Christmas, Baby, Please Come Home in a movie that it takes place at Christmas time. Like I was like, why don't they feature that song? And I'm sure it would have been a little awkward, but it's like, God, that's like an iconic Christmas song. It worked so well in Gremlins a few years before this, which is probably why they didn't use it. But I never pieced the two together that she is the same person who sings that song.
No, yeah, I mean, well, the fact that none of her songs are in there. I mean, she's He's
a Rebel.
Yeah, I mean, she was big in the 60s and 70s.
Uh-huh, yeah.
So you're right. I actually hadn't made that connection at all, but that's really ridiculous.
Because I love that Christmas song. So anyway, Jackie Swanson, who plays the young daughter who dies right at the beginning of the film. Mm-hmm. And this is just so weird. She is best known for her role on Cheers as Kelly, the rich and simple love interest of Woody. That blew my mind. I was like, whoa.
I'm letting that sink in right now. That's crazy. I totally remember that. I don't place those faces.
I can place her face. Like once I said that, oh, okay. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that totally is.
Wow.
It's just so funny. This is like one of those things where it's like, I need to get out of doing TV and sitcoms. What can I do? I know. And then she jumps into this one.
Okay.
And then the last one is Mary Ellen Trainor. She's the psychologist, and she ends up being kind of like a comedic foil for Riggs through the rest of the films, which does kind of drive me nuts. But she's one of those faces that just I know so well, and I think so much of it comes from things like Romancing the Stone, where she's Joan Wilder's sister. She's the mom in The Goonies, and obviously from that kind of tied into Richard Donner. She's also in the Monster Squad, so she's tied in with Shane Black, who also wrote that.
She's in Die Hard.
Yeah, she's in Die Hard.
Action Jackson. She's in all of these. You're right.
She's
Scrooged.
in so much stuff. And geez, she's, she pops up in Forrest Gump. I mean, she's all over the place.
Truly.
Just one of those faces that it's just like, once you see her, you see her everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's those are easily the faces, with the exception of the police chief. I guess we didn't mention the chief.
Steve Cahan, Captain Murphy. It's like he is best friends with Richard Donner.
Yeah, right.
Superman,
he's always a cop.
Inside Moves.
Yeah.
No, listen. It's the same filmography. Superman, Inside Moves, The Toy, Lethal Weapon 2. It's the Radio Flyer, Lethal Weapon 3, Maverick. Like he's in all of Richard Donner's films. It's crazy.
Right. This so he was another one of those faces. The other thing I did want to mention was that this film really is about the pretense of this film is all around. They mention Air America, right? The Vietnam, the CIA run evacuation protocol, and this made me want to go see that movie again.
Which I've never seen, but that's Mel Gibson's in that, right? With
Robert Downey Jr.
Downey Jr.
And I remember liking it, but I remember also just really liking the young Robert Downey Jr. I thought he was very funny and awkward, and it was more or less he was the straight guy to Mel Gibson as the goofy kind of senior pilot in the Air America program, and I actually remember really liking that.
Well, and that was more of a comedy, right?
Yeah, much more of a comedy. But it was one of those it was a comedy with a that wore its agenda right on its sleeve. It was funny, but it definitely had a point.
So right. They were trying to point out a little bit of the
the history and the perils of the history. But it was Roger Spottiswoode, and so Turner and Hooch.
The publicity for the film, advertised as a lighthearted buddy movie, implied a tone that differs greatly with the actual film's tone, which includes such serious themes as an anti-war message, focus on the opium trade, and a negative portrayal of Royal Laotian General Vang Pao.
Yeah, it was definitely a true story. They really tried to bury that into the comedy.
Interesting.
So, anyway, that's worth seeing.
What'd you think of all the stunt work in this?
I did like the stunt work.
Considering it's an action film, yeah.
A lot of jumping up and jumping off of things.
Dar Richardson was he's credited at the end for a like in memory of, he's a stuntman who actually died, I think, shortly after production on this finished. He died in a motorcycle accident, but he was like the high fall specialist in Hollywood. One of his most amazing stunts, he doubled for Christopher Plummer at the conclusion of High Point in 1982, where the villain falls from the 1,170-foot high CN Tower in Toronto. He took the plunge with a concealed parachute, which he opened at the absolute last moment, and he earned $150,000 for that stunt. He did another one where he did a fall from a very high balcony, and it looks like he lands on the pavement, but what they did is they did a wire rig that decelerated his fall, and so there's no airbag, and he lands on the pavement, but the wires kind of kept him from getting hurt. It's like crazy.
That's awful.
It's nuts. It really is crazy. So yeah, he's one of those guys. I can see why they credited him for the crazy work that he did, and I guess it didn't sound like he actually did the fall in this film, but
certainly got the credit and got some deserved credit.
Well, he designed the stunt that Jackie Swanson does, where she does the high fall at the beginning, and he trained her to do that. And then I don't think he did the stunt with the airbag. I'm not sure if he was the other guy or not, but clearly he is a guy that knows how to handle these sorts of things. So kudos to him. Amazing stunts here. And then you look at that, and then you also look at kind of the fight at the end of the film. I think this is really funny. What did you think of okay, we already talked about what we think of the fight itself, but what did you think of the actual fighting style? I'm curious.
It was, it was really chaotic. And in terms of how it was, I had a hard time moving in and out of styles. Like we would move into, full on Jiggly Monkey, and then out to full sort of proscenium view of the stage of the fight. And we watch these guys move in and out of different, just sort of crazy grappling to dance moves with each other to jumping up and down on each other and throws. And it was sort of beautiful in its chaos. And I think they looked good.
What I think is funny, well, one, you read that in the script, and it is just really a violent fight. Like every hit, it's like, and then more ribs break, and then he dislocates his arm. And it's like it is constantly these two guys with their skills from the covert ops that they were in Vietnam, and the skills that they learned, messing each other up in really bad ways. And Riggs actually like does this jump over him at the end and like snaps his neck. And it's pretty crazy that the way that it all happens. But the in the script or in the film, it sounds like Richard Donner wanted this fight to be really unique. And so he brought in a bunch of different martial arts specialists to do this, to teach these guys how to do this fight. They brought in an expert for capoeira. They brought an expert in for jailhouse rock, which I didn't think was a fighting style.
That's an Elvis thing.
But apparently it is a fighting style. And Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Now, I think it's great that they brought these guys in. I really appreciate the lengths that these guys went to, but I didn't feel like it was a martial arts fight. I was like, really? That was all different martial arts styles, like pushing their head into the puddle. And
that's a capoeira move. No, I always thought that capoeira and Brazilian jiu-jitsu were sort of one and the same.
Yeah, capoeira is a Brazilian martial arts style that combines elements of dance, acrobatics, and music, and usually referred to as a game. So I think what it was not so much.
I remember how I heard about it. I think capoeira, wasn't that was the dance style of fighting? It's like a street dance off. It's like the Sharks and the Jets. That's what it was. West Side Story.
Yeah, it's known for quick and complex moves using mainly power, speed, and leverage for a wide variety of kicks, spins, and highly mobile techniques. So it's very movement oriented.
Kinetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the movements of capoeira tied in with the jiu-jitsu, which is the fighting style, along with jailhouse rock, which, yes, is a term to describe a different fighting styles that have been practiced and or developed within U.S. penal systems or U.S. penal institutions.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's what they're fighting with.
I didn't see that in the thing, but I don't know. Look at this, fullcontactmartialarts.org, 52 hand blocks jailhouse rock. This is a thing.
It is. Things you learn.
Things you learn. Did not see this coming. Okay. Overall that was all great, but none of it really matters until we talk about the music.
Oh, yes. Yes. Good old Michael Kamen and Eric Clapton.
Eric Clapton was just such a score on this movie. I think this is possibly the best action movie score I have ever heard. For a movie like this, for a contemporary kind of action buddy cop movie. I don't mean to narrow my scope too much because I really do love it, but I don't want to compare this to like Star Wars. But still, this score represents the character and the narrative better than just about anything I can think of. It's longing and lonely and incredibly listenable, and I think it's just perfect.
Well, I'm glad you like it.
You don't like it?
I really don't. I have a hard time.
Insane. What?
The music just doesn't work for me, and I mean, I like the lonely theme that Eric Clapton kind of has, that guitar theme that he has for Riggs. I think that is nice. The rest of the score feels very dated now, and I have a hard time connecting with it. I don't click with it very much, so I'm sorry.
Man, that's okay. I mean, wow! I'm so surprised.
This is probably why when we talked about Rush, I had no recollection that Eric Clapton had ever done film scores, because it just doesn't work for me at all.
I really expected you to love this one.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of Michael Kamen's other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's something about this one that I really struggled with this time, and I just kept rolling my eyes when the music
You
would play.
rolled your eyes.
I was like, oh, more of this. Yeah, I did. I really did. So
to go back and listen to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves to cleanse your palate.
I liked that one. That one was good.
So much better than the movie.
Yes, that is true. That is definitely true.
You know, I mentioned that the fight scene verged on the Jiggly Monkey. It went Jiggly Monkey pretty hardcore, but generally the cinematography was pretty straightforward. Stephen Goldblatt did the cinematography of this one, and Stuart Baird did the editing.
Yeah, you say pretty straightforward, but I actually thought it looked really nice. I thought they did a lot of nice stuff that just, it made it feel very cinematic. And I think that was a strength for Richard Donner to bring Stephen Goldblatt on. It may have been pretty standard, but at the same time, it was standard in a really cinematic way that allowed for that scope.
Yeah, no, and I don't want to. I mean, he didn't go so far into the Jiggly Monkey everywhere, right? I mean, I felt like the opening sequence was really gorgeous. That the helicopter zoom into the building, I thought was beautiful. I mean, talk about cinematic.
Especially for its time. I mean,
yeah.
That's the sort of thing, and they go into the room and stuff. I was like, that was pretty impressive for a 1987 film.
Absolutely. What I'm saying is I could follow it all, and that's a real gift. Like, I felt like I followed the narrative, and the cinematography didn't get in the way until the fight scene at the end, where I started getting frustrated. So overall, I think that for me is a great compliment to it.
He's done some great stuff. I mean, we talked about him recently on Outland.
Yes.
And a while ago on Joe versus the Volcano. And oddly enough, tying to last week, he did Young Sherlock Holmes.
There you go. There's some good
Always
stuff
looking
there.
for connections, yes.
Anything else we need to talk about? Oh, you have, I do know something we need to talk about. You actually have a very special link that we haven't brought up on this show in a long time, and that is the Internet Movie Firearms Database.
Yes, it is. Which always makes us sound like such gun nuts, which we're totally not. But I think it's great that somebody put this website together so you can see what sort of pistols, revolvers, submachine guns, rifles and carbines, shotguns, and other miscellaneous weapons these guys used in this film. And I'll just tell you, it's a lot. It is a lot. I think we should keep a record of the Shane Black series as we go along to see which of these ends up using the biggest variety of guns.
Well, because a lot of these are just more shots of his Beretta, right?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of Beretta.
A lot of Beretta. There's a little Beretta.
Yep, yeah, that little tiny one. Yeah, I always love looking at this website. Yeah, the Smith & Wesson looks great.
Yeah.
I mean, it even goes into like the grenade, that they use.
Oh my gosh, the page doesn't end.
Yeah, and then there's the big
Heckler
rifle.
and Koch PSG-1.
The sniper rifle that he uses when he's out there. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, it's a really interesting website, and I always laugh when I get to look at it and see what all the weapons are. I mean, it is pretty interesting that these guys clearly know their stuff, and they bring on a lot of weapons.
They really do. That is a thorough assessment of the weapons.
Yes. So we'll have that link in our show
that'll
notes
be
for
in the show
everybody
notes.
to check out.
I love the grenade. That's too funny.
So this film was nominated for 1 Oscar, which it's fitting, I guess. This is the sort of film that ends up getting that 1 Oscar nomination for something like for its sound. Yes, it did get nominated for Best Sound. The guys involved with that did a great job here. It did not win. This was the big year for The Last Emperor, which seemed to kind of sweep the Oscars that year. So The Last Emperor won. The other nominees were Empire of the Sun, RoboCop, and The Witches of Eastwick. I will say the sound in this was pretty solid, so I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen The Last Emperor, but I don't know. It seems like this or RoboCop are the sort of films I would have thought would win Best Sound, but
Yeah.
who am I to judge?
Is this up for a reboot?
You know, they were talking about this. Warner Brothers, I think 5 years ago now, they announced plans to actually reboot the series without Gibson and Glover, just starting some same characters, but new actors playing the roles. They did hire somebody to write the script, Will Beal, and that's kind of all I've heard. I don't know anything else, if it's kind of just fallen off the map, if they've been unable to figure out what to do with it, or what. I'm very curious.
As of it looks like as of February, Riggs' character had yet to be cast, but Damon Wayans was hired to play the part of Murtaugh, and it was going to be a TV reboot directed by McG.
Wow, really?
Yeah. From script and executive producer Matt Miller. So, where do you stand on McG?
Having just rewatched Charlie's Angels, I'm not sure. I don't think I care that much for McG. I'm trying to remember what else McG has done, if there's anything else that I enjoy.
Well, Terminator Salvation.
That was not something I enjoyed.
What? You didn't? You had no?
No.
You didn't like that one?
No.
So yes, that was there, but he's got a number of other credits. It looks like he's also behind Shadowhunters, The Mortal Instruments. He directed one of those episodes as TV. 3 Days to Kill. That's one with old 2x4 was in it, and I thought you might have liked that.
It looked interesting, but it also looked that was the one as I recall, it kind of looked, it looked like there was a weird tone change, as I recall in the trailer.
Yeah. What about We Are Marshall? I think you said you hadn't seen that one. Is that right?
And I still haven't.
Okay. Well,
it looked schmaltzy and...
Yeah, well, it's exactly what you get schmaltzy on the cover. Yeah, I mean,
right.
Believe me, it's all written on the tin. And then This Means War was another action comedy. This was a Chris Pine and with Reese Witherspoon, Chris Pine and Tom Hardy. Yeah.
That was basically the spy versus spy.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think my wife saw that and really regretted her time spent with that one.
No, you'd want your time back after that.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it looks like Lethal Weapon is possibly moving to TV. McG will direct the pilot, and it is only still in announced stage. Nowhere filming, so it'll be interesting to see.
Well, if they're bringing on one of the Wayans brothers, and McG, I get a real sense as to where they're taking it.
Yeah. No, I mean this is he was also behind Chuck.
Oh,
remember Chuck? Yeah, I think he directed the pilot of that one. Anyway, he was part of the production team on that one too. And so you also get a sense like Chuck was that same kind of action comedy, humor, heart, that kind of a thing.
Right.
It was good. I mean, we actually enjoyed that one. That was kind of fun. The first 2 seasons or so. Then it went bananas.
Then it went off the rails.
Anyway, how'd it do?
Like I said, this opened March 6th, 1987. It cost $15 million to make, which is about $30.7 million in today's dollars. So, considering what action films cost these days, that actually seems really low.
Yeah, that would have covered the helicopter today.
Yeah, right, exactly. It ended up making domestically about $65 million and about $55 million internationally. So all told, it ended up grossing about $120 million, which is about just under $250 million in adjusted dollars for today. So all told, this film ended up making about $1.9 million in adjusted dollars in profit per finished minute. This film did really well. This film held the number one box office spot for I think 3 weeks straight until it was bumped by Blind Date of all things.
Wow.
So,
Blind Date.
So yeah, it did really well, and obviously it was, it spawned a huge franchise that I think has made well over $1 billion. It's a very phenomenally successful franchise, and clearly, if they made it based on what I think they should have done, it probably wouldn't have done as well as it did.
Yeah, right.
So, but that being said, I mean, it's a fun film. I just didn't connect with it as much as I did when I was younger.
We probably should go ahead and rank it, don't you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and you can see our stack rankings of all of our films. And you should join us. Search for Lethal Weapon, and you can start right with us. Just search for Lethal Weapon, click Add to My library, and you'll get a Filmo-off-Filmo matchup. Lethal Weapon versus probably something that'll be really difficult.
Nope. Lethal Weapon or Stagecoach.
Oh, that'd be Lethal Weapon.
That'd be Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Lethal Weapon or Boogie Nights. Definitely Boogie Nights for me.
Boogie Nights, yeah.
Lethal Weapon or Sunshine. I'm
Sunshine.
going with some Sunshine.
Yep, Sunshine.
Lethal Weapon or Being John Malkovich. Definitely Being John Malkovich.
BJM.
For me. Lethal Weapon or Viridiana.
Lethal Weapon.
I'm going with Viridiana.
How seriously?
Half seriously. I had so many more problems with Lethal Weapon this time. Viridiana, I think, was a really smart film. I really enjoyed it. I probably won't watch it that often. I'd watch Lethal Weapon more often.
That's pretty telling because, that's it. I mean, that's why I'd watch Lethal Weapon. I mean, I'm a Lethal Weapon on that.
But
so I don't know why you would pick Viridiana when you are telling me.
Because it's the better film.
But you're on a desert island. You're on a desert island, and you have these two movies in a VHS player. You're telling me you're gonna watch Viridiana more often than Lethal Weapon.
I'd have to think about it, because if I'm on a desert island and I want a film that's actually going to spur me on to more thought in my time stuck on this desert island, I'd pick Viridiana, because there's going to be a lot more to think about with that film. Lethal Weapon, there's not going to be much to think about. How's that for a thought?
It's wrong. So we're going to have to go to the mat on this one. I don't know why we care by the time it's at this age.
I'm going to give you Lethal Weapon. I'm just saying, I think Viridiana is a better film. I'll give you Lethal Weapon.
All right. I will take it.
Lethal Weapon or Goodbye, Mr. Chips?
Jeez. Probably Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, I'd do Lethal Weapon. I mean, Goodbye, Mr. Chips I enjoyed, but
yeah,
it also was relatively forgettable by now.
Yeah.
Lethal Weapon or the Lavender Hill Mob?
Lavender Hill Mob.
I'm definitely doing Lavender Hill Mob.
Definitely.
Lethal Weapon. Oh, that's it. 107.
Wow.
Landing at 107.
If you had asked me this November 10th, 2011, where would Lethal Weapon end up in our top 230 some odd movies, I would have told you easily it would have made the top 50.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe without having seen it, it would have been higher. But upon rewatch, I just don't feel I feel like it's actually in a pretty fair spot.
I do too. I don't feel bad about it. I certainly don't feel bad about it. But it surprises me. Sad and surprised.
Well, this is what happens when things age on you, I guess.
Yeah. What does that do to your Letterboxd star rating?
Well, I also feel like this would have been higher had I not rewatched it.
Yeah.
I think I'm putting it at a 3.
Yeah, I'm a solid 3.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. So that kicked off our Shane Black story series, and I have to tell you, on reflecting on just the straight up screenwriting and the general fun of the film, it made good on its promise of being a welcome relief to the dirge that was 1939. It was so much fun to watch this movie. Where do we go from here?
We are going to be continuing this fun series with The Last Boy Scout. It's not Shane Black's next film that he wrote. That would be, if you count The Monster Squad, which came out the same year, and then, of course, the idea that he came up with for Lethal Weapon 2. Mm-hmm. Those were kind of also sandwiched right in here. But this is the next big thing for him. So 1991's The Last Boy Scout with a little Bruce Willis action.
I like some Bruce Willis.
Yes, and speaking of Wayans,
we get Damon Wayans in this one. Yeah. There you go. So I don't really remember it at all. I mean, at all.
I remember several things about it, one of which is the opening, and I am very excited to watch it, if nothing more for that opening, because I remember really enjoying that quite a bit.
All right.
The opening football game. Do you remember the football game?
Not a stitch.
Well, nope. I'll be excited to talk about that with you next week.
Okay. All right. Well, I also look forward to that. I can't wait, mostly because I am enjoying Shane Black. So, well,
you're here.
Way to go, Shane. And until next week, I got to go to bed.
All right. I've got a building to go jump from to see if the inflation bag magically inflates for me, too.
Amazon, Andy, it doth giveth. This is, mine is from K Good. As in, and I think it may be somebody's name, K, but it makes me think, oh, K, good. Makes me think like that. Like this. I don't know. As is often the case, the original film of the Lethal Weapon series is better than the comparatively pointless sequels which were made. And there's no doubt this film is slickly done and fast-paced. It's definitely short attention span theater. That's the praise I'll give this film. The film clearly shows American society in a very bad light and hasn't aged well. For pity's sake, isn't anyone just a little nauseated by, or at least fed up with, the concept of a loose cannon, anti-establishment psycho cop who blows away presumed bad guys with a horrifying, prolific precision? Didn't we have enough of this whole thing with the Dirty Harry series? Lethal Weapon is very much a Dirty Harry ripoff, except it tries to build two likable nonconformists, both of whom wisecrack quite a bit, as the centerpiece, instead of the single, more morose, Dirty Harry loner. That is an interesting, and we didn't talk necessarily about what the cultural reflection is of Lethal Weapon on American society, but I think it also celebrates exactly what we kind of needed to see in the 80s, in the war on drugs, in we were just in a very different place, and I think I think there is definitely kind of a reflection of police power and fighting the good fight that was reflected in this film, and it may have been in sort of a bullheaded fashion, but that's definitely what it celebrates.
Well, and Shane Black even said his intention was to do an urban western inspired by Dirty Harry, where a violent character reviled for what he did, what he is capable of, the things he believed in, is eventually recruited for being the one that could solve the problem.
Right. So there you go. Now, K Good gave this 2 stars. That was a 2-star review.
Well, I got a 1-star by Dan Reef, who watched this on VHS in 2001. That's right. Why there were 3 sequels to this is beyond me. All it is a city prostitute committing suicide and her dad thinking about killing himself too. The action sequences are bad. Not good. Bad. So there you go. Clearly he wasn't paying attention to the story, because I don't think anyone really kind of killed themselves.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amazon.
It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our 2-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our naughty children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with The Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.